Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the New Media Podcast. I'm your host, Ya. We hope you enjoyed the last episode because, as always, today's going to be an even better episode. I got the whole crew with me. Everybody's in the house today, and today we'll be giving a little bit of a Week 3 recap. We'll talk about a couple of different matchups from a couple of different teams. We also got some breaking news in the NBA world. It's been a very, very slow couple of months in terms of the NBA. Normally, we don't start talking about basketball till late September, early October. We're kind of around that time right now. We had a Woj bomb earlier. Damian Lillard's on the move officially. The sweepstakes is officially over, so we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit more. And then, of course, we'll go ahead and close out with our Week 4 pick'em predictions. But, of course, before we jump into all of that, temperature check, how's everybody doing today?
I mean, NFL wise, I feel pretty good. I'd hope to be 3-0, but 2-1 is better than not having a win at all. So I am happy at where my team's at. But the NBA wise, the Damian Lillard news was a dagger. Was a little bit of shocking news because everything was going a bit slow in the NBA world. We hadn't heard much for a while. Maybe a couple free agent signings here and there, but nothing much has happened. And then all of a sudden, we got the classic Woj bomb. So it was a bit of a disappointment to hear, but we'll definitely get into it.
Yeah, man, if you ain't sitting here with 2 wins or a win, I don't know how you enjoy football this past couple of weeks. My Seahawks are 2-1. Great weekend this past weekend. Shout out my guy Geno Smith, you know what I'm saying? And speak about the basketball news, like I just said, it was pretty last month and a half, 2 months been quiet over the Damian Lillard front. And, we get hit with this Woj bomb. So, I can't wait to talk about it and let's get it cracking.
I can't wait for my Vikings to get their first win so I can just, join the club. I'm tired of all these sneak dissing and all these shots sending towards my way, man. But, nonetheless, still a good week of football. Disappointed for my team, but overall, the quality of play was very great. Of course, we'll get into the Woj bomb. I got some very interesting thoughts about that. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's get started with our Week 3 recap. And we'll start off with the Miami Dolphins, a team that I think we'll be talking about pretty much every episode if they continue to play like they did last week. And they, almost broke a record, scoring the second most highest points in all of football. Had the opportunity to break the record by taking a field goal late in that fourth quarter, but took the high road. And, they said that they didn't want to humiliate the Denver Broncos more than they already did by beating them by a margin of 50 points. They beat them 70-20. But I think what we learned from the Miami Dolphins this week was just how explosive and how elite their offense is, and how they're a force to be reckoned with. Like I've been trying to tell you guys these past couple of weeks, dating back to the preseason. But are we ready to admit that the Miami Dolphins are the best team in the AFC or just the NFL as of right now?
I mean, currently as it stands, they are. With how well their offense has been playing. I mean, I feel like every single person got a piece of the pie on Sunday, and they did that even without Jalen Waddle's involvement. I mean, Devon Achane, their rookie running back, he got involved. Raheem Mostert, he went off. Tyreek Hill, per usual, who's been one of the hottest, if not the hottest, wide receiver in all of football. He went off as well, and so you had a Tua played great. You had a situation where everybody balled out, and this offense has been looking flat out unbelievable. It's a bit of embarrassment for Sean Payton and his team. And, for you to have 70 dropped on you, it's just, you have to reevaluate yourself. I mean, you go from Vic Fangio to Van Joseph and, your defense completely takes a nosedive. I mean, you have a situation where even a guy like Patrick Surtain, who, is as elite as it comes in terms of being a cornerback, even he had a pretty bad game. And so overall, I mean, it's a disappointment for the Denver Broncos, but as it stands right now, I mean, the Dolphins are, the best team in the AFC. I mean, they're 3-0. Their offense has been lights out. But it is still early in the season. The teams are starting to ramp up. The Chiefs, they 40 balled the Bears. Joe Burrow, late in that second half of that Rams game, he started to look like himself, even though injuries still bothering him. You still have Josh Allen and the Bills still looming around. So, you have a pretty big matchup this week with the Bills and the Dolphins, and I think that's like a real litmus test to see how this Dolphins team really performs. Because if they outperform the Bills, then like a new discussion will be started about them. But as it stands, I think they are the best team in the AFC, but it is just because they're red hot. I don't think they're overall the best team because the Chiefs and the Bills and all these other teams are still looming around, but they have looked fantastic.
Overall, I mean, for me in the AFC, I do believe they're a top two team, them and the Chiefs. I do believe right now they're probably one of the best offensive teams in the NFL, but overall, completely, I probably still have the Niners and the Eagles above them. But right now, man, McDaniel's got these guys. He got them rolling offensively. It's unstoppable. Tua, he's on fire. Tyreek's one of the best receivers, and you put this in the scheme. Well, Waddle coming back healthy and having these two explosive running backs behind you, and Mostert and Acne. It's crazy. They put 70 on Sean Payne's head, and I'm not a guy that fucks with Sean Payne, but Sean Payne deserved that. He was out there talking shit. He was out there, speaking his word, saying this, saying that. Being comfortable, throwing Hackett under the bus. Coming into this offseason with this macho top vibe that his team is going to be putting up numbers. His team is going to be winning, and he was talking, and he got his ass cooked, and a well-deserved cooking that he deserved. So, this Dolphins offense, I did speak about this early on in the preseason and everything, talking about how explosive they can be and, what type of offense they can run. We're seeing that. And, we haven't seen the team in our era or any team score 70 points since I don't know when. It's been a minute, and these guys look like they're playing some Madden on that field. So you gotta pay some homage and respect to them. Got to pay some respect to Tua. We talked a lot of shit about Tua last year. We still have his doubts this year, but these last 3 games he's been hooping. So yeah, they're one of the best teams in the AFC. Defensively they played great. They're still missing a guy like Jalen Ramsey. So it's for the stars for them.
We're still just gonna give Kansas City their respect, even though they haven't looked like the Kansas City of old.
They looked fantastic this last weekend. They looked
against Chicago,
amazing. Man.
Against Chicago, they had to show off for Taylor Swift, man. Come on now.
If we're not giving the Super Bowl champs the benefit of the doubt, then why should we give anybody the benefit of the doubt? I mean, these guys they're the reigning champs. If we're not giving them the benefit of the doubt, and they've been to the Super Bowl multiple times already, so if anything, they deserve the biggest benefit of the doubt. So they sit at the top of the puzzle.
Because you said Philly and Niners. Niners, I can see they look like they're picking up right where they left off last year, with Brock Purdy under center. But Philly though, I don't know about Philly, man. They don't look like the Philly of old from last year. They don't come in with that same type of swagger.
They're still winning games even with their passing attack being inconsistent. I mean, they're running.
They're really not. They're really not running the passing attack like that as heavy as they need to, but at the same time, it's like that run game is just the Swift is finding holes that are open like it's nothing. He's walking through gaps and it's like, okay, where's the tacklers at? So that old line for them is abusive. They get to the 1 yard line and you know what type of play they're gonna do, and it's unstoppable. So Hurts he's gonna get his 2 running touchdowns right there, and that's how they dominate. Look at their defense. One of the best defenses in the league, especially with Jalen Carter playing the way he is and the way he stepped up into that defense. I feel like he's one of the best defenders in that front seven. Being a rookie that he is right now, I think he's one of the best players in that front seven. So to have him with everybody else on that D line and that secondary, I still feel like the Eagles still one of the best teams. And if you guys are worried about the passing game, I'm not gonna worry about him much. You got Hurts. And then you got 2 receivers that that can figure it out ASAP. You got AJ Brown, you got Devontae Smith. So for me, the passing game is whatever. But focus on the run. Once the passing game start clicking, it's not going to be an issue for me.
Okay, that's fair. You're banking on their passing game just going back to how it was last year over time. The one thing that they got going for them, the 2 things they have going for them right now, their defense and their run game. That's fair. Man, the Miami Dolphins, man. I think I can sit here and confidently say they sit head and shoulders above majority of the teams in the AFC. We'll give the Chiefs their respect, but I would still put Miami at number 1. Man, this is, like I said, this is a team that we're going to keep on talking about each and every week, just due to the fact that because they have such an explosive offense. It's just so hard to stop. You can't you can't game plan against speed. There's no game plan you can come up with defensively to try to slow down their playmakers and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and the Denver Broncos defense. The Denver Broncos, the one thing that they've been consistent with is just how good they've been defensively, and they were still able to expose them without their second best wide receiver on the team. And so as we keep on moving forward throughout the course of this season, the Miami Dolphins offense, obviously it'll have their ups and downs and it'll have their tests, with the big one coming up in Buffalo this upcoming week. But man, these guys can go toe to toe with anybody. And as soon as Jalen Ramsey gets back into the fold and, early to mid-December, it's going to be interesting to see how things are going to shape up in the postseason. But aside from the Miami Dolphins, let's go ahead and move on to a team in the NFC, which lost their starting cornerback just due to a torn ACL earlier last week, and that's Trayvon Diggs and the Dallas Cowboys. Trayvon Diggs is going to be out for the rest of the season with a torn ACL, and their first game without Trayvon Diggs resulted in a loss to the Arizona Cardinals. I believe the score to that game was 28-16. The Cardinals, they're looking like a better team than we anticipated at first, but with the Dallas Cowboys losing Trayvon Diggs, does that remove them, from the Super Bowl contenders bubble?
I think we might have overrated Stephon Gilmore just a bit. I don't think he looked particularly great in that last matchup. The Dallas Cowboys kind of came out flat-footed, and they did seem to adjust for Micah Parsons. They just kept running the ball, and it seems like that's the adjustment that even the Eagles did when they were up against Micah Parsons. They just decided, let's just keep running the ball and basically negate his pass rush ability. I mean, on top of the fact that they were missing 3 offensive linemen. I mean, Zach Martin, he had an ankle injury, and it felt like the Cowboys were able to move the ball, but they just couldn't cash in whenever they got to the red zone. I think they had 5 trips inside the 20-yard line, and it was just almost impossible for them to cash in. So, some of that is just a bit of a luck factor, but at the same time, it's just like it felt like the Cardinals just wanted a bit more. James Carter, he had a fantastic game. Josh Dobbs has been almost like a revelation type of player for this Cardinals team. They have looked good. They've been hungry in how they've been playing. They've been aggressive. And that last throw by Dak, I think, that's kind of the criticism that we've had about Dak. It's just, in those specific moments when you need Dak to show up and have of a big moment, that's the type of play that'll show up in. So I do think the loss of Trayvon Diggs does kind of knock them down a bit because, that was their true number one. And I don't know how to feel about Stephon Gilmore. I think he's still solid, but I don't think he's as good as everybody perceives him to be.
Man, I feel like this Diggs loss is pretty big. I feel like having Gilmore now compared to when he was on the Patriots or on the Colts as a number 1 cornerback, I feel like now and then it's completely 2 different times. Right now, he's coming onto a team where they asked him to be the 2 behind Diggs, and losing Diggs with a torn ACL in practice and one-on-ones, it makes no sense to me. Your star player shouldn't be going 100% like that in practice, especially on a one-on-one drill. It's crazy. I feel like this loss to them is going to be pretty huge, man. I feel like Diggs is one of the best corners in the league, especially to that Cowboys defense. He sets the tone. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. A lot of people don't like to throw to his side. He picks up a lot of interceptions, and he completes that defense in the secondary. And against Arizona, it just showed, Dak being another game managing quarterback that he is. Having that 5 red zone entries and not scoring one of them red zone at all, it's tough. He gets there and he can't finish. He gets there and he can't finish. He gets there and he can't finish. And then the last drive that he had going into the end zone, throwing that pick between a triple coverage shot, find the receiver in a small amount of space, it didn't work out for him. The linebacker just completely took that shit off. So for me, I do think losing Trayvon Diggs is gonna kind of push them out of that contender bracket. Even with Dak struggling as a quarterback, I never thought Dak was going to lead them to the promised land. But that defense was looking crazy the first 2 weeks, and for them to come out like this, week 3 against the Cardinals, very staggered, very cold, like not uppity on like they're used to be. It was a tough outgoing for them. So Dak. The same things that we've been talking about, and it's the same issues reoccurring. Your team needs a go-ahead win or a go-ahead tie. I don't think that he's not the man for you. So that's my take on that. Arizona, they're fine with some grit right now. They look much better than that we thought, and they gotta pay some respect to them, man. They're missing a lot of players. They don't got a lot of star players, and they're making do for what they have.
I think just the one thing that stood out to me the most from this game is just how lost they looked defensively without Trayvon Diggs. I mean, how I guess he was really that important to that secondary, obviously being the best corner on that team, but you know, they really just didn't have anybody to replace him. I think they replaced him with with the backup corner Deron Bland, and I mean that guy
Mhm.
got cooked all day by Marquise Brown. Even Stephon Gilmore got cooked by Marquise Brown. They just really didn't have any answer. They try to make the adjustments on the fly. They try to do the best that they could, but even then, the Arizona Cardinals being led by Josh Dobbs and James Conner was able to, put up 28 points. Josh Dobbs didn't really do anything crazy, but 189 yards, 17 for 21, very efficient, a touchdown, and then James Carter had himself a solid day. For the Dallas Cowboys, man, this was a team that I thought, obviously with Trayvon Diggs and how good they looked the first 2 weeks. What I was saying about them early on in the preseason about those guys going to the NFC Championship game, or even having a Super Bowl berth this year. It was looking pretty good up until now. Now I feel like their Super Bowl opportunity or whatever chance they had of making the NFC Championship game alone has gone out the window, because I don't think Trayvon Diggs, you can go ahead and replace him easily and try to slide in some other guy like Deron Bland and just hope that it's the best. It's gonna what was going on before him is going to happen after him. But Dak Prescott, obviously the first 2 weeks he didn't necessarily have to do much, and this conversation about him is still the same. And I thought this was going to be the year that obviously, all of that talk, all the conversations surrounding a guy like Dak Prescott would be put to rest. But unfortunately, the issues are still there. His inability to make plays and extend drives and cash in on red zone opportunities against a Cardinals team that's not really looking to win. They're just really looking to compete each and every week and give it their 110%. And win or loss, they'll be satisfied, or they'll go home and be like, all right, whatever. We gave it our best shot. But all the credit to the Arizona Cardinals for game planning excellent. Really exposing this Cowboys secondary without Trayvon Diggs. And a lot of contending teams we're watching that game for sure. I think a lot of teams are going to take note of that. The Dallas Cowboys have to fill that void, as best as they can. And Deron Bland, their backup cornerback that started in replacement of Trayvon Diggs, just really isn't the answer. And the Dallas Cowboys got to fix up as soon as possible, or Dak Prescott has to elevate his play. It's either or. It's one or the other. But we're just gonna have to wait and see when it comes to that. But aside from the Dallas Cowboys, let's go ahead and move on to the AFC South, man. This is a division that was supposed to be, led by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is now looking pretty interesting so far as we're 3 weeks into the season. But the Jacksonville Jaguars did just lose a game this past weekend to the Houston Texans, led by rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud. So these last couple of weeks, the Jacksonville Jaguars, man, offensively, we thought these guys would take off like a rocket with the acquisition of Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence continuing what he was doing last year towards the end of the season. But that just hasn't really been the case since week one when they beat the Indianapolis Colts. So let's go ahead and get some thoughts about their struggles so far as the season has started.
I don't know. It's kind of a just an odd thing because they start off with the connection between Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence, and then they went into Kansas City and were unable to produce anything. It felt like they couldn't get anything going for that offense, and then again this week, just and crazy. I don't think Trevor Lawrence was even sacked. It just felt like he wasn't even able to find any sort of space to throw to this against this Houston team. He just it felt like his timing on his throws weren't there. Like nobody was getting open. Calvin Ridley, a bunch of drops that happened with Calvin Ridley. The offense just seemed like it was just out of sync. And then you flip on the other side, you had CJ Stroud, who looked absolutely like a stud. Him and Tank Dell, that connection continues to be growing. You have Nico Collins, and that offense is projecting to be better than we thought it'd be because CJ Stroud, he's looked very confident. What scares me about this Jags defense, this Jags team, is their defense. Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, they weren't able to really generate pressure. I felt like nothing was going for them on defense, and on offense they were struggling. So it's kind of a confusing thing. I am a bit close to hitting the panic button, but they have a reset week. They're going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who are a better defense than people give them credit for. But it is a team that I expect the Jaguars to show up against. And if they decide not to show up again this week, then I'm definitely hitting the panic button on them, because as this team is sitting at 1-2, and you don't want to repeat of last year where the first half doesn't look good, and then you're forced to try to come back in the second half, because the likelihood of that happening again might be minimal.
First off, shout out my dog CJ Stroud. That guy, phenomenal game. Phenomenal game. I think I
That's
forgot
your guy, man.
Yeah. We locked in. That's my twin right there. But great game from him and Tank Dell, man. They locked in the last 2 games. They've been hooping, and this Houston team offensively, they're surprising us. I feel like they're showing us more and more what they can do, and this is not even them at their full force. They're still young. They got Nico Collins, they got Damian Pierce, they still got this young old line. I can't wait to imagine what they can do in the future with when they progress. But to speak about the Jags, I always feel like these guys always start off slow every single year. They come in the first 4 to 5 games, it looks nasty, offense is not going, and we always have these doubts, And I feel like Trevor Lawrence got to pick it up. This time I'm talking about just Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback. I feel like he rushes the ball out. He's throwing it a little more inconsistently than he usually does. A lot of inaccurate passes. A lot of stuff is going on. I feel like he's trying to force feed Calvin Ridley here and there. I feel like they're going away from the game plan. They got guys like Christian Kirk. They got guys like Evan Ingram that needs to be involved. They got guys like Travis Etienne that needs to be involved. And I feel like they just got to slow down. Let Calvin Ridley come into the fold and let him slowly work into that number 1 receiver role. But they don't need to force feed him. Against Kansas City was tough sledding. They got to the end zone a couple times. They didn't want to kick it. They didn't, complete some 4th downs, and they lost. And then, last week coming up, people thought it was going to be an easy matchup against Houston. Offense was slow again, and then they lost again. Shout out, Houston. They had a big kick return from their fullback, and a couple of interceptions that resulted in end zone touchdowns. But Trevor Lawrence got to pick up his game, and it all starts off with him being the leader of that team, and that's it for me. Yeah, I feel like we gotta hit the panic button if they lose to ATL this week, because they're gonna be sitting at 1-3. I'm pretty sure going into week 5, and coming back from 1-3 is tough. Last year they did that. They did win the division, coming back from a losing record, but I don't know if they can do it back-to-back years. So they got to wake up. They got to show something offensively and get back to what they ended off the season with last year.
First things first, man, I have to give a lot of credit and a lot of respect to CJ Stroud, man. He's come in as the number 2 overall pick, and he's looked like far and away the best rookie quarterback so far in his class, in comparison to Bryce Young and, Anthony Richardson, the one game and a quarter that we saw from him so far this season. He just looks so poised in the pocket. There's not a throw that he can't make. Looks very, very calm under pressure. Really making, something out of nothing. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, those are his 2 main weapons. He's still able to, throw the ball 300, 400-yard games. And so, credit to him for being able to adapt to his environment extremely quickly. All the credit to D'Amico Ryans for getting these guys ready to go. I seen a quote the other day saying that he doesn't really care who's in the starting lineup. It's just all about giving guys an opportunity to showcase, their talent. They had that next man up mentality. And, all the guys on the Houston Texans roster has bought in. And I think there was a player that came out that's in support of CJ Stroud. I'm not too sure. I think it was our tight end that said, we're glad that we have this guy pretty much. I'm not too sure if that was supposed to be a shot towards Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson and things of that nature. But that looks like the team is in support of CJ Stroud. So it's very great to see him, get better each and every week. The Jacksonville Jaguars, though, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and hit the panic button at all. I think it's a little bit too early, 3 weeks into the season. But at the same time, though, this is something that I talked about early on when we talked about their hype coming into this season. It's a lot. It was just a lot. It's been a lot so far for them. All the hype coming in, trading for a guy like Calvin Ridley. Everybody thought they would hit the ground running, and it's not as easy as you think when you add a great piece into the mix, a great piece to the puzzle. Everything takes time. Trevor Lawrence has to understand that like force feeding Calvin Ridley isn't really the option. You have a lot of playmakers on the team. You have a great running back in Travis Etienne. You just got to let the offense flow and let the game come to him. I think he's trying to force a lot of these throws sometimes, and a lot of it just doesn't look great right now for the Jacksonville Jaguars, man. And right now, the leader, the number one team in the AFC South, is the Indianapolis Colts with a record of 2-1, getting a win on the road in Baltimore in overtime, being led by their backup quarterback Gardner Minshew. But is it too early to say that the AFC South is a lot more open than we first thought?
I think, well, I think the Colts have a better, better roster construction than we like assumed for that team. I mean, Gardner Minshew is coming in. He stepped in as a viable backup. I think their head coach has done a great job in terms of manufacturing their offense, and I think when Anthony Richardson's able to get back, the team will look much better. But this AFC South, this division, it's a lot more competitive than we assumed. I think that may be because of how much we've overrated the Titans. I think the Titans are, they've got their own issues going on with that team. Derrick Henry has been unable to get anything going, and that offensive line has been downright just awful, awful. Ryan Tannehill has not looked good at all. That entire division, I think, the Jaguars are struggling, and CJ Stroud's look good with the Texans, and the Colts have been, better than we thought. So I think we are in for a bit more of competition than we assumed. And I think I read a stat like Houston has been the Jags like a bunch of times, like 10 of the last 11 when it's at home. So they kind of do have their number, but as the season goes on, depending on how the Jags do, I think then we'll start to see separation. But as for the Titans, I think we may have overrated them just a bit because Derrick Henry's been struggling behind that terrible offensive line. They haven't been able to create any sort of holes. To Ryan Tannehill has been good. DeAndre Hopkins, I think maybe people overrated his ability to just be the same DeAndre Hopkins because separation has been a big thing for him, and it just isn't there. So I think as the season goes on, we'll see some separation, but definitely the CJ Stroud has the Texans in a position that they can compete, and with Anthony Richardson coming back, maybe he can do the same. So we'll just have to see.
The AFC South, I feel like it is more competitive than we thought it was going to be. I feel like we underrated the Colts and the Texans and overrated the Titans and the Jags. I feel like especially the Titans, the issues they have going on. Henry touching the ball 15 times, getting 20 yards. The O-line in shambles. Defense not looking great. They got a lot of problems going on over there. And the surprise about the Colts, that even with Richardson getting hurt and having Minshew stepped in, they're still winning games. They're still competing. They're still fine, man. Offensively and defensively. Guys like Zach Moss is stepping up. Guys like Pittman has been cooking lately. The last 3 weeks he's having above 10 to 11 targets, catching the ball 9 times, ending the games with 80, 88 yards, 90 yards, a touchdown here and there. And he's a big piece to that offense, and they're missing Jonathan Taylor. So see the Colts, they're with their new head coach step in and improve like this. It's good to see, especially the Texans too as well. Them going into the draft, picking up C.J. Stroud, picking up Will Anderson, picking up Tank Dell, and it's a whole new type of offense, whole new type of defense with a whole new type of coaching staff, and them to compete in that and win. It's great to see. And then you see the Jaguars, and then you see the Titans. Two teams that we thought were going to run off with the division, and those two teams are going to compete for the top of the division, are slowly looking like they're not putting anything together. Their team looks in shambles. The coaching staff is not finding ways to win games. But they have the pieces. They have the offensive pieces. They have the talent there. So for me, the Jaguars, I feel like they're going to come back up. But I don't see the Titans coming back up. I feel like Titans are still going to struggle. But AFC South is a pretty competitive division. A lot of young teams, a lot of young quarterbacks in that division. So for the future, it's going to be pretty nice.
I think the one thing that would hold me back from buying into the Houston Texans is just their inability to run the ball. I think, throughout the first 3 weeks, they haven't really been able to, use Dameon Pierce a lot. They've really required CJ Stroud to throw the ball 40 times a game, 40 plus times. And, they've been able to, come out with a 1-2 record, but at the same time, it's just like they have to be able to run the ball. A lot of these teams in the league have, two different types of offenses out there on the field every single time. But I think for the Houston Texans, that's the one thing that's holding them back, just their inability to run the ball. Having no run game, teams are going to be able to adjust to that. And, maybe it's because of their offensive line. Maybe it's Damian Pierce, taking a step back from what he was doing last year. Because once he stepped onto the scene last year, he was pretty good. But that would be the one thing that would hold back the Houston Texans. But Big H, you mentioned Jonathan Taylor, and we're in week 4 of the NFL season. It's almost time for him to make his return. Although they're still having a dispute between Jonathan Taylor's camp and the Indianapolis Colts organization. Looks like Jonathan Taylor still doesn't want to be there. But I did hear a report a couple of weeks ago that he is, trending in the right direction in terms of his health. That ankle injury that he was dealing with is no longer an issue anymore. He looks like he'll be ready to go when he comes off the PUP list after week 4. But with Jonathan Taylor coming back potentially for the Indianapolis Colts, let's say he does come back in week 5, would you guys give the Indianapolis Colts a legitimate shot at winning this division, or do you guys still think that the Jacksonville Jaguars will be able to kind of just pick this thing up and take this thing by the horns and take off?
No, I don't think it's enough for Jonathan Taylor to just come back and this team be able to win the division. I think, he's a great running back, but at the same time, you still have a rookie quarterback who's going to go through his ups and downs in the first year of this offense. And, I don't know if the Colts' expectation is to go out and, win this division. I think they have, they've kind of tamed their expectations with Anthony Richardson. Willing to prove that they're going to throw him into the fire and, build up this team as it goes. But I think the Jags are going to pick up their offense as the season goes by. And I don't really expect the Colts to, really compete for the top of the division. I think maybe 5-6 wins are still on the card for the Colts, but I don't necessarily see this team going out and winning the division. I think Jonathan Taylor is good, but it's not enough for him to come back and this team suddenly is able to win the division. I don't think that much is a potential for this team. So you might as well go ahead.
You're on mute, yeah.
Thank you for calling that out. The one thing that I'm looking forward to when Jonathan Taylor comes back, if he comes back for the Indianapolis Colts, is just how effective he's going to be. Last year was an extremely down year for him, whether that was due to injuries or due to that offensive line. It looks like they fixed their offensive line issues because Zach Moss has been able to run behind this offensive line very, very well in replacement for Jonathan Taylor. And so I feel like there's an opportunity here for the Indianapolis Colts to do something very, very great this year. If Anthony Richardson is able just to continue what he was doing in that game in a quarter that he played so far, he gave this offense a different look with his rushing ability. It's still a very raw prospect when it comes to his arm talent, but he didn't look too bad, in that very first full game against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. I think he had a pretty solid outing. Still had an interception, but at the same time, it was a very solid day for him. Then he comes in the first quarter of that Houston Texans game in the second week, and he has 2 rushing touchdowns off rip. And that second rushing touchdown, I believe he sustained that concussion, which forced him to sit out of last week. But it looks like these guys are locked in, man. And even with Anthony Richardson going through his ups and downs, if the Indianapolis Colts are serious about contending for division title, if the Jacksonville Jaguars just leave that door a little bit open and leave it in, the Indianapolis Colts just might be able to pounce on that opportunity because they know they have a guy like Gardner Minshew, who's still a very solid backup in this league that can come in and do a better job than Anthony Richardson is doing at the time if Anthony Richardson is struggling. But I'm really looking forward to Jonathan Taylor coming back to this team. I think that would be the best thing for him. That would boost his stock. I know the contract issues and he wants to get paid and all of that stuff, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily have the greatest year last year. If he comes back and just absolutely goes on a tear, it looks like the Jonathan Taylor from 2 years ago. It'll only boost his stock, but it's going to be interesting to see for sure. But let's go ahead and move off from the AFC South, and our last NFL topic for the night will be the biggest surprise and biggest disappointments from week 3 of the NFL season. We'll go ahead and start off with the biggest surprise.
I mean, one of them was going to be 0-3 in this matchup, as it's either going to be the Vikings and the Chargers, and the biggest surprise to me was 100%. The Vikings going 0-3. I did have this team coming back down to earth. Because last season, 11 one-score games. I don't think that's sustainable. It was quite clearly a record. The offense was, absolutely a phenomenon. I don't think offense has been particularly an issue for this Vikings team, but for them to go 0-3, I think that was the biggest surprise to me because coming into this year, I was expecting them to win maybe 8, 9 games. Potentially, if at worst, you'd expect 7, but that's a bit of a stretch with the offense that they had. And then all of a sudden, you turn around another 0-3, and so like when you look at this team, what direction should they head in now? I mean, I do expect that they're gonna attempt to continue to, compete at a high level, but at the same time, when you start off 0-3, that's a huge hole to put yourself in. And I don't know how many teams, get out of a 0-3 hole. And like I said before, this team, I mean, this division isn't necessarily like it was in the past, with Aaron Rodgers there, but at the same time, some separation is starting to be created from this team. And so when I look at it, I think the Vikings were, to me, the biggest, you could really argue both surprise and disappointment. I was happy with the performance that Herbert had because I know for a fact if the Vikings had scored a touchdown on that last play, you guys would be talking about, well, Herbert doesn't show up late fourth quarters. Herbert doesn't show up. Well, he had 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that's exactly what he did. So, was going to bring this up. I was going to wait and say it. But, yeah, can you talk to me? What is going on with the Vikings? What is the plan now? 0-3. What's going to happen now?
Man, oh man, I honestly don't know where to start. I wish I could be sitting here talking about how Justin Herbert wasn't able to get the job done against my Minnesota Vikings, but unfortunately, I'm sitting here on the opposite end of that. We suffered a very, very big loss, and man, I think for me, last couple of days have been tough, man. I've been thinking about it, sitting on this. I think for me, for the Minnesota Vikings this year, I wasn't ready to throw in the towel coming out of last week when we lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. I had a little bit of hope, but whatever hope I had left is gone out the window now. I think for sitting here with an 0-3 record, there's not really much for us to do for the rest of the season. I'm looking at the rest of our division. Obviously, the Chicago Bears are right there with us at 0-3, but I'm looking at the Detroit Lions. I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers, and I expected the Detroit Lions to be a team that would compete for the NFC North, and that's exactly what they're doing. But the one team that definitely caught me by surprise, which is my biggest surprise so far this year and this week, is just the Green Bay Packers and how well they've been playing. And coming back from a 17-0 deficit, that's something I didn't expect. I was expecting to come on here to talk a lot of shit about the Packers, but unfortunately, putting up 18 points in that fourth quarter to come back and win that really shut me up. But I'm looking at when Aaron Rodgers left this division, I was sitting here thinking that this is our time to run the NFC North, and this is our time to run the table. And we were going to be the team to beat. We were going to be that team that wins 8 out of 10 NFC North division titles. Maybe you have the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers win when we have a down year, but for the next 10 years, we were going to be able to run the North. But now, the plan is just to throw the season away. To be honest, I feel like there's no use, for us to continue to go out there and try to win games because what's our roadmap? What is the plan for the Minnesota Vikings? That's the question I've been asking myself for the last couple of days. Like, what is next for us? We sit here in an 0-3 hole. We just lost a very winnable game when we got down there in the red zone and Kirk Cousins threw an interception because TJ Hawkinson wasn't able to corral the ball in. It's just like right now we put ourselves in a tough hole, and we understand that Kirk Cousins isn't going to be on this roster next year. And the next steps right now that the Minnesota Vikings have to take is just to lose as many games as possible, try to tank for a top draft pick, and try to get one of these quarterbacks that are coming out of the draft because we sit here at 0-3. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, we end up running the table. We win games we're not supposed to win, and we end up making the playoffs. We end up winning the division, making a wild card spot. For what? All for that, just to lose in the first round, the second round of the playoffs? That doesn't really do much. That's not really going to satisfy us Minnesota Vikings fans. Like, at the end of the day, we need to go out there and grab ourselves a franchise quarterback. And the one thing that I'm going to be looking forward to coming out of this current season is just the moves we make in the offseason and how we handle the whole Justin Jefferson situation. It was already a red flag that we weren't able to come to an agreement with him on an extension. And now the price is only going to go up with this play. 3 consistent weeks of over 150 yards. If you guys want to be very analytical and statistical, 2 weeks of 150 yards and 1 week of 149 yards, potato, all the same thing. Justin Jefferson's having himself a better start to this season than he did last season. And he had a great season last year. And so, like I said, man, I'm ready to throw in the white towel. There's no point for us to continue to win games because we don't have the defense to compete. Our offense can only do so much. You saw us go back and forth with the Chargers. Every time we got off the field, our defense would allow points. And Kirk Cousins can go down and put up a touchdown. We can get a touchdown. By the time he gets back on the field, the defense has already given up a touchdown. So our offense is going to keep us in a lot of these games throughout the rest of the season. That's one thing for sure. I have no worries about our offense. It's just our defense. We don't have any great defensive players. I know Danielle Hunter is second in sacks right now at 5 behind TJ Watt. But at the same time, Brian Flores is just calling up a lot of blitzes. So that's where Danielle Hunter is really going to eat. When you're setting a whole lot of pressure, a lot of offensive lines are going to crumble, and that's where Danielle Hunter is going to capitalize off those opportunities. But if our defense can't get a stop to save their lives, there's really no point for us to just continue to go out there and put up 24, 28 points per game and lose these shootouts, because at the end of the day, there's no point. The season is already lost. Like I said, whatever hope that I had coming into last week, it's all gone out the window, man. So that's pretty much where I stand with my Minnesota Vikings. I'm just ready to, chalk up the season. I'm ready to move forward to the offseason, man. And first things first, like I said, the one thing I'm going to be monitoring the most is how we handle the whole Justin Jefferson contract extension conversation. Because if we're unable to re-sign him to a second contract post his rookie deal, and we let another top receiver move off of us and go on to a different team and dominate like we did with Stephon Diggs, I'm not too sure how much longer I'm going to be a Minnesota Vikings fan. I'll be completely honest.
That's tough. That's tough, man. That is tough. So, biggest disappointment for me was the Cowboys. I feel like, they could have came out this week without Trayvon Diggs and still make that statement that, that defensively they're still that team and that they can come out and still compete. But they walked in there, they got stomped on, they looked embarrassed, and they gave some film to a lot of teams. They gave some good film to some teams where they're going to pick up on some key stuff that the Cowboys do, and it's going to be bad. So I feel like they're the biggest disappointments. Biggest winners this week, the Dolphins. You can't say much about that, dropping the 70 bomb. That's all, that's all you can say. Everybody getting the touch of that pie. So, that's it.
I think for me, man, I think the most disappointing is a toss-up between, Dallas. I don't know, man. I feel like the Ravens let a good game slip out of their hands, man. I know that the one thing, there's 3 things guaranteed in life, death, taxes, and a lot of Ravens players being on the IR list or being ruled out. And, now the injuries, it looks like they're starting to pile up for this Ravens team, man. That's the one thing that's holding them back. That's the one thing that's always held them back so far. Just their inability to stay healthy, man. That's just one thing you can't really guarantee for this Ravens team, man. But, yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement when it comes to that. The Bengals also didn't look too good as well, even though they did force Joe Burrow to play this game and they were able to win 19-16. That calf injury is something that we're going to have to monitor as we go on throughout the season. He didn't look particularly great. It was good to see Jamar Chase get back into the fold this game, but it was just enough to get by against a Cooper Cup-less Los Angeles Rams team, and I'm not too sure if they're going to be able to pick it up and get back to their level of offense and play that we know the Bengals are capable of. But I guess it's just the whole wait and see situation. But aside from the NFL talk, man, let's go ahead and get into the NBA breaking news. The news that shocked the world today. The news that made waves throughout the internet, man, and that's the Damian Lillard sweepstakes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a winner, and it is not the team that we thought would win the sweepstakes. And the winner of the Damian Lillard sweepstakes is the Milwaukee Bucks, surprisingly. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Portland Trail Blazers were able to agree on a 3-team deal, including the Phoenix Suns earlier today. The Milwaukee Bucks received Damian Lillard. The Portland Trail Blazers received Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Tumani Kamara, 2029 first-round pick, and 2 pick swaps from the Milwaukee Bucks that will be discussed at a later date. And the Phoenix Suns were able to receive Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. Damian Lillard is finally out of the Portland Trail Blazers. He's finally moving into a different direction. But with Damian Lillard now going to the Milwaukee Bucks, let's go ahead and grade the trade, and also answer,
Yeah.
where does this duo rank in the Milwaukee Bucks? What were you gonna say, Big H?
I got one question. I'd be since the first day that he requested the trade, you're 98.9% sure Dame is gonna be wearing a Miami jersey. It's been 3 months. It's been 3 months. They've been flirting with you. They've been flirting, going back and forth, and today they're like, you know what?
I think everybody was surprised about this trade. Of course,
surprised.
like him going to Milwaukee is a huge surprise, but him not even just going to the Heat in general was a huge surprise, considering the fact that, of course, him requesting only to go to Miami, his agent coming out saying that he wants to go to Miami, and today his agent did have a statement about how the fact that it takes two to make a deal. The Miami Heat, they actually. They tried their best. Mickey, Pat Riley, the entire organization, they tried their best. It just didn't work out. And for the Milwaukee Bucks, is 100% A plus like grade. Drew Holiday, he is a playoff dropper. That's just a fact. If you look at Drew Holiday's playoff numbers, his shooting is not good at all. Last year and the year before, even the season that they had won, in the NBA championship, Drew Holiday's shooting numbers were not good at all. Like, in terms of his playoff numbers, they always dip. He has one of the lowest true shooting percentages in the playoffs every time. And now you replace him with, arguably a top 5 scorer in the league, the second best shooter in the league, in my opinion, one of the best pull-up jump shooters, and you pair him alongside the best paint finisher in the league. I mean, that's a match made in heaven. It can't get any better than that. Now you have a situation where it's not just Giannis in those late situations. You literally have Damian Lillard, who's one of the most clutch players in the entire NBA, and now you have that coming into the playoffs. The Milwaukee Bucks, one of their biggest issues always was, their shooting and pull-up jump shooting. Chris Middleton was consistently hurt. Now with Chris Middleton being relegated to third option, I think that's even huge because he's taking backs. He can absolutely do well in that position where he's a third option. He's no longer that second option. He's always been a kind of a reliable player, but injuries have kind of caught up with him. And now for that team, I think that's an A plus. I'm just kind of confused on, what the hell the Suns have going on in this trade. I don't know why they would decide to go and get Yusuf Nurkic. I don't think he has any relevancy to them in this trade because you had your complaints about DeAndre Ayton and reservations about him, and I understand that DeAndre Ayton, he has issues whether it comes to efforts and engagement. But now KD is your best defensive player in that entire lineup, and that's an issue. I understand KD can be a decent enough rim protector and help side defender, but the lineup is not particularly full of plus defenders. I think Devin Booker is an average defender. Sometimes he can be a little bit above that, but outside of that, Bradley Beal is not the greatest defender these days. KD is just a rim protector. Yusuf Nurkic is not a defender at all. I just think that entire lineup, it just doesn't make as much sense to me anymore. DeAndre Ayton, I feel like his athleticism and his rebounding was enough to help this team now, especially that they had gotten Bradley Beal. So this team, I don't understand what why they would even go out and try to involve themselves in this trade. But for the Portland Trailblazers, I think this was incoming that they were eventually going to move on from Dame, and I think that they have some sort of they took a chance on DeAndre Ayton. They feel like there's some upside there. They got rid of an aging guy in Yusuf Nurkic who doesn't really fit their plans in terms of rebuild, and now you have Scoot, you have Sharp, you have Simons, you have Ayton, and you have Jeremy Grant there. You have pieces that you can build off of and continue to move forward. But like I said, the Miami Heat, we're the biggest losers in this all, and it's not because of our ability to make a trade. I just think that the Portland Trailblazers decided that they wanted to go out and get different assets, and I can't quite understand why they would decide that they would get DeAndre Ayton, who's on that contract. But I guess that they value him in that way, and that they want to build, they want to enter rebuild with a center like DeAndre Ayton. So the Milwaukee Bucks, I think they absolutely nailed it with this trade and pairing Giannis with a guy like Damian Lillard. Even though they are in our conference, I am excited to see about how that pairing works out.
Milwaukee, man, Giannis, I feel like, all the stuff Giannis been saying this offseason and, the past summer, talking about, hey, man, if I don't get, if the issue doesn't get fixed here or the problem, or does he see himself in Milwaukee forever and yada, 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 or his time might be up soon. But like this triggered the move to actually go get Dame Doll. And I love this move for the Bucks and Giannis because, last year, if you look at the playoffs and, going down to those last minute stretches and Holiday having the ball, him not, finishing, and Giannis is not your elite, closer like that. He's a big man, he's athletic, but you can build the wall against Giannis. Now you got a type of player like Dame Lillard coming in, like one of the clutchest players in the league. It's tough, you got a closer right there, and I feel like it just spaces the floor more. It opens up the court a little more for Giannis. It helps Middleton a little more. Probably helps Brook Lopez a little more. Probably we're gonna have to see how defensively it works for them. But to me, they're the winners of this trade, and like I'd said, the losers of this trade, Miami. Obviously they weren't involved in this trade, but to come in here waiting for Dame Lillard for 3 months, not making any offseason moves, losing Max Struss and Gabe Vincent to the Cavs and to the Lakers. Now not fixing the core issue of their problem in the playoffs and in the finals. Having that secondary elite scorer, having that secondary center right next to Bam to help them defensively and on the boards, and let Bam stretch the floor. They didn't fix that in the offseason. Their whole time, their idea was to get Dame Lillard, and Dame Lillard will make that trio with Bam and Jimmy, and they have a big three. That didn't happen. So for me, they lost pieces in this offseason. They didn't get Dame. They didn't fix their problems. For me, the biggest loser of this trade. I feel like Portland getting Ayton, it kind of gives Ayton that room to be that number one player that he always wanted to be in Phoenix. When Book that spot, CP3 came, KD came, they added Bill. He was always getting pushed back to being a third and fourth option. I can really see him on this, Portland team being a 1 and 2 option. Him getting a lot of touches. Him working with these young guards on this team. He can prosper and become a great center. And then the Suns. Defensively, we know it was going to be in shambles, regardless of the situation. Even if KD was your best defensive player at the start of it or at the end of it, they're going to be horrendous defensively. I don't know why they got Nurkic. I feel like Nurkic is probably a better center compared to Ayton in this type of offense and this type of scheme because he doesn't require a lot of touches. He's not going to complain, and he's not going to quit on you like we've seen Ayton do in the past. So I feel like for them getting Nurkic was just because of that and letting the other three work together to fulfill that offense. So crazy, wild trade. I feel like Dame's going to be happy playing with Giannis, man. That takes him, that brings him closer to that next step to getting that championship. And I really believe that he got the team to do it with the Bucks now. Suns, they're the Suns. We know they got KD and Book. And Portland, I'm pretty sure they only got one first-round pick in this trade.
A 2029 first-round pick and 2 pick swaps that'll be revealed at a later date. I'm not too sure when they'll give the full details, but they have 2 pick swaps. I think they're from Milwaukee.
2 pick swaps and Ayton and a first-round pick. Not too bad. I feel like Ayton is going to be a corner piece to that franchise, so we'll see what happens. But overall, Miami should be pissed off.
No doubt, man. No doubt. This move from the Milwaukee Bucks pretty much sent a message to all of the small market teams in the NBA. The message is pretty much that you want to do right by your superstar, and you're more than capable of building a NBA championship contending team, while also being a very, very small market team. I understand the Milwaukee Bucks are 2 years removed from winning an NBA championship, but they've also struggled in these last couple of years to get back to the mountaintop, and then them being in a very, very small market, it's kind of hard to attract free agents and stars. But they were able to make a move like this and go ahead and grab a guy like Damian Lillard, man. A++. I'm on board with you guys as well, man. This is a great move. Big H mentioned a little bit, Giannis having his doubts on whether or not he was going to extend with this team. I think that those words only came out a couple of days ago, and the Milwaukee Bucks said, nah, if you need some help, we're going to go ahead and bring you some help. Help is on the way. And they ended up going out and acquiring a guy like Damian Lillard. So great move for the Milwaukee Bucks for sure. The Portland Trailblazers in this deal, I'm not too sure. I hope in the coming days we find out what offer the Miami Heat had on the table for the Portland Trailblazers, so we can go ahead and compare and see which team had the better deal. But for right now, they got a guy like Drew Holiday who doesn't fit their plans. He'll pretty much be traded within the coming weeks. We'll be talking about that as well in a little bit. But while also acquiring a guy like DeAndre Ayton, this is a great fresh start for him. Removing himself from a toxic environment in Phoenix. It looked like he wasn't, his regular self when he first got there. Moving down the pecking order, only going down to 4th now with Bradley Beal coming into the fold. It's a fresh start, and it's a new opportunity for him to adapt with a lot of these young guys. He fits their timeline. So I think he'll be there for the foreseeable future. He'll play out his contract with the Portland Trailblazers along with those young guards. And the Phoenix Suns, I kind of like this move a little bit for them. I think they did acquire a little bit of some more depth that was a big question, that the question mark for them coming into this season. They were a very aggressive team in the free agency market, trying to acquire as many guys as they could on like very short, very, very small, like vet minimum deals, nothing too crazy. So I think this is very solid in terms of depth. But after you did highlight defensively, they still have their issues. And I think for the idea for the Phoenix Suns coming into this season is just that we have three of the best scorers in the league with Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, and we're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and we're just going to outscore you guys. Defense does win championships, but in this era, it's a little bit different in comparison to the old days. They have a lot of scoring options that they can go to: Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. So they're just thinking, if we're able to outscore these guys, if we're able to just stay healthy, it's gonna be a problem for a lot of teams to outshoot us, outscore us, just because of their ability, just because of their scoring ability that they have. Yusuf Nurkic on an expiring deal, he won't be on that team for too long. I'm not too sure how much is left on that contract, maybe like a year or two, I think. So he won't be there for the future. He won't stick around for too long, but. Man, oh man, the Miami Heat. I honestly just don't know where to start with these guys, man. It's the one destination, the only destination I wanted Damian Lillard to go to was to the Miami Heat, man. It's just to help out a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's a playoff riser. As we've seen these last couple of years, to really help him out and really get Miami over the top. Because the Miami Heat have been knocking on the door of an NBA championship, but that door just keeps on getting slammed shut. We saw it get slammed shut in the bubble against the Lakers. And this past year against the Denver Nuggets, where it looked like, obviously Jimmy Butler's out there doing all he can, but at the end of the day, he needs a secondary scorer alongside him. And so I'm not too sure what it is, with the Miami Heat and them losing out on sweepstakes. They missed out on, obviously Damian Lillard right now. They missed out on James Harden when he was coming out of Houston. All that issue was going on there. The Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes, they missed out on that opportunity, and they also missed out on the Bradley Beal opportunity. So now, that's 4 big sweepstakes that the Miami Heat have missed out on, and I'm not too sure where the Miami Heat go from here. So, I guess my question to you guys is: did the Miami Heat's championship window just close with this move?
I mean, I expect that they're gonna probably go out and try to get a guy like Drew Holiday, but that's not enough to be a needle mover. You have the Bucks with Dame and Giannis, and then you have the Celtics with KP and Porzingis. Of course, you have the Cavs still looming around with their free agent signings, and I at this point, I don't know how to feel about this roster. I think at the end of the day, Spoelstra is a great coach, and I think Jimmy Butler, Bam, Hero, they're good enough players to guarantee that this team still ends up in a top 6 seed. They feel they have, potentially they're looking at some leaps from some of their players and Jovic, but losing Gabe Vincent and losing Max Strus, you still have Caleb, but overall this team has gone worse, and you know this team, I was thinking about the alternatives that they had. They kind of missed out because you could have signed a backup like Christian Wood. You could have went out and got a guy like Kelly Oubre. You could have signed these marquee, some of these savvy veterans, these free agent signings, and potentially just helped out your roster, filled out some holes. But even that doesn't happen. So I think that the championship window is kind of closing because Jim Butler, as it stands, he is getting older. He's getting up there in age, and this roster hasn't necessarily improved a ton going back to last year. And so I don't necessarily see a championship window for this team, and I don't believe in a miracle where they're going to go from a play-in seed all the way to the finals again. I just can't see that happening.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, they didn't make the moves like some other teams did in the East to make their teams better. Like Boston over here acquiring Porzingis to fix some issues, and then now Milwaukee acquiring Dame Lillard. I feel like Miami has been stuck at the same spot, not giving Jimmy or Bam some help, not fixing the front court identity, and not adding another true scorer to the roster. And I feel like it's gonna affect them in the near future. Jimmy's getting old, and it's not gonna help him very much. And to speak about Drew Holiday, that's another guy that got traded. I know he's probably not gonna stay with Portland. He's probably gonna be on the trade market immediately. I don't know if he's gonna be on the buyout market, but that's another one of the guys that he can be on the championship contending team to look out for. So if Miami do want to see if they can get Drew Holiday and add him to the team, maybe that might be a piece. But yeah, tough summer for them. Losing Max Strus, losing Gabe Vincent, not fixing the death core issues, and not really getting another star player on the team.
I the days of the Miami Heat just turning up in the playoffs and coasting through the regular season. I feel like those days are over now. I think they can continue to coast through the regular season to try to preserve a guy like Jimmy Butler. But at the end of the day, man, every team around them is getting better. While the Miami Heat are just kind of sticking with their Heat culture and sticking with the guys that they got and kind of just running it back. And that's the one thing that's always held them back, man. Their inability to go out there and make moves, losing out on all these sweepstakes and really acquiring another superstar to help aid a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's capable of, being the playoff riser that he is. And so I feel like there's not a move right now that they can make to go ahead and, continue and keep their championship window open. Whatever move that they make right now is only to just, it'll only help them with their playoff run for maybe 1 to 2 rounds. But when they go ahead and match up with a lot of these top teams in the Eastern Conference, one being the Boston Celtics and two being the Milwaukee Bucks, I feel like this team will continue to have some struggles and they won't be able to, overcome all of that, because all the Miami Heat, that's the one thing, man. They just sit back and watch a lot of their, folks in the Eastern Conference get better while, they kind of just stick to the grit and grind basketball, the Heat culture, and they really try to get the guys that they have bought in. But at the same time, it's like, you got to go out there and make and construct the best roster possible. And, that can come down to Pat Riley and that can come down to Mickey Arison. But at the same time, it's just like at the end of the day, if there's a deal that needs to be made, you have to go out there and make that deal. But Drew Holiday, let's go ahead and talk about him for a little bit. Obviously Drew Holiday, he did get moved to the Portland Trail Blazers, but he is not in their future plan. So he will be on the move in the coming weeks. Where would be the best landing spot for a guy like Drew Holiday? Just give me one destination.
I guess the obvious one would be Miami, especially after losing out on Dame sweepstakes. I think they would be trying to go for a viable replacement. And of course, Drew Holiday is still a solid player, but he's in no Damian Lillard. But another destination that I think everybody's been kind of talking about, throwing out there is Philadelphia 76ers. I think James Harden's situation is still going on. His standoff with Daryl Morey still been going on. I mean, he was in the club, with signs talking about Daryl Morey's a liar. So, they're still having their standoff. They're still going at it. Those two, I think their relationship is past, fixing. So I think a situation could happen where there's like a 3-team trade, Harden sent maybe to the Clippers. And, I think Drew Holiday's sent to the Philadelphia 76ers. And something else is, maybe some pieces are sent to Portland Trail Blazers to help them continue to rebuild. So I think really just Philly and Miami are the two viable options.
Yeah, I mean, I do see Philly as a viable option with, James Harden situation going on. And then obviously Miami, yes, but I'm intrigued to see that Philadelphia option. I'm pretty sure he's from Philly, if I'm not too correct, him and his brothers. Pretty sure they're from Philly. I know he's talked about retirement pretty soon. Who knows? He got like a year left on his contract or 2 years left. He probably wants to retire at home. I mean, Philly is a good team for him, but Miami's probably the best place he could be in. The type of culture that they have. I feel like he plays that type of basketball. I feel like he fits in right with them. That hard-nosed type of basketball, that physical defense basketball. That gritty basketball. So I feel like Miami's the best choice for him. I do want to see what Portland is going to ask if they don't buy him out. I don't know if Miami wants to come back to the table, try to make another trade with him, but we'll see what happens.
I think the Miami here are pretty much just hoping that they just buy out his contract so they can go ahead and just pick him up for free, because I don't think they're willing to go back to the negotiation table with the franchise that just did him dirty. For me, I feel like the best destination for Drew Holiday would be the Boston Celtics, and I feel like a lot of people have kind of had their feelings about this so far the last couple of hours since the trade has been made. I think Drew Holiday would fit like a glove with this Boston Celtics team, man, if they're able to make this type of move. The Boston Celtics, they understood that the roster that they had these last couple of years just wasn't good enough, to win an NBA championship. 2 years ago, they were in the NBA Finals. They had themselves a nice little run post January, and they're able to, make it to the NBA Finals. But unfortunately, they were able to come up. They weren't able to, finish the job. They came up short. Last year, they went through, obviously going down 3-0 to the Miami Heat, knocking on the door of a finals berth. But Jason Tatum getting an ankle injury in Game 7 really hurt their chances of clinching the NBA Finals berth again. And they made some pretty big moves this past offseason. You know, they moved off from Marcus Smart, a guy who's been their point guard, a vocal leader in the locker room. They sent him to Memphis in order to acquire a guy like Kristaps Porzingis to, you know, add more big man depth, add more front court depth along with guys like Robert Williams and Al Horford. And I feel like if you add Drew Holiday into this mix, you're pretty much getting a very good Marcus Smart replacement with a guy that is slightly better offensively. I wouldn't say he's crazy better offensively than Marcus Smart, but he's still a very good offensive player in comparison to a guy like Marcus Smart. And so you wouldn't necessarily rely too much on Drew Holiday doing a whole lot of scoring alongside guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and also Kristaps Porzingis. You just really need him to lock up and play defense, facilitate the offense a little bit. It will take the pressure off Jason Tatum and his ball handling duties, and also score from time to time. You don't need a crazy scoring output from Drew Holiday in this offense on this team. You leave all the scoring to those three guys, and you just let Drew Holiday be the defensive menace that he is. So I feel like Boston would be a very, very good destination for a guy like Drew Holiday. The Miami Heat, if they're able to get their hands on him, would be a good spot for him. But it's not a crazy needle mover for me. I feel like at that point they're taking whatever's left over from that deal, and it'll maybe help the Miami Heat a little bit. But come playoff time, like Abdi mentioned to start off this topic, you know, Drew Holiday isn't the playoff riser at all. He's a playoff dropper. So that's not really a guy like that Jimmy Butler wants, you know, riding shotgun with. You need a guy that's going to be able to put the ball in the hole and also be a playoff riser alongside a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's a playoff riser himself. The interesting fit that, you know, I can't just really understand is just the Philadelphia 76ers. I understand he may be from there and all of that, and they're probably moving on from James Harden in the coming weeks as well once that deal happens. But I just don't know what a deal will look like between, you know, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to retain Maxey, and, you know, Maxey will be the 2 guard and you'll have Drew Holiday at the 1. But does that really move the needle for the Philadelphia 76ers? Does that really help their chances of clinching an Eastern Conference Finals for the first time with Joel Embiid and all of that and being NBA Finals contenders? I'm not too sure, man. I think the one thing that we'll be talking about throughout the course of this NBA season, since the NBA season is right around the corner, is just the time that the Philadelphia 76ers have. There's not much time left for a guy like Joel Embiid. You know, we've been seeing these last couple of years, a lot of superstars have been on the move. And, you know, Joel Embiid being the top 5 player that he is, I'm not too sure how much time left he has in the Philadelphia 76ers uniform. So I think that's one thing that we're going to continue to monitor as the NBA season goes on. But like I said, for me, I think the best destination for a guy like Drew Holiday would be the Boston Celtics. I think he'd fit like a glove. And those guys would be, you know, those guys would be able to compete right now with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think as of right now, as it stands, the Milwaukee Bucks are right back to being the best team in the East, and the Boston Celtics are just right behind them. But that pretty much wraps up our NBA discussion for tonight. Now we'll go ahead and move on to our Week 4 pick'em predictions. We're just gonna do a rapid fire. There's no need to, you know, give your reasoning on why you have a team winning. I'm gonna go ahead and list out the matchup, and you guys will all just go ahead and give a winner. And that way we'll go ahead and move off and enjoy Week 4 of the NFL season. And of course, we go ahead and start off with the game that's going to be happening tomorrow night between two divisional teams in the NFC North on Thursday, between the 2-1 Lions going on the road to Green Bay.
I'm gonna pick the Packers. That's my team.
I got Detroit.
You have Detroit. I'm going Green Bay here. I've won against Green Bay all season. I'm gonna pick them and see if it helps in terms of the record. Now we move on to our 6:30 game on Sunday. We have the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Is this a London game?
I think so.
Golly, I hate these, man. I'm gonna go the Jaguars though.
I'm gonna take the Jags.
Jaguars it is. Let's go ahead and move on to an interesting matchup between the Miami Dolphins going on the road to play the Buffalo Bills.
I'm gonna go with the Bills in this one. Rock with the Bills.
Miami.
I think the Miami Dolphins come down from that high that they have. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Buffalo Bills in this one. Two teams, a game that we won't be tuning into. The 0-3 Denver Broncos go on the road to play the 0-3 Chicago Bears.
I don't think the fortunes changed for the Bears, so I'm gonna go with the Broncos.
I don't fuck with Sean Payton, so I'm gonna go with the Bears.
I'm going Bears with this one. We have a divisional game in the AFC North between the Baltimore Ravens going on the road to play the Cleveland Browns.
Well, this is a good matchup. The Cleveland Browns defense has been lights out. I'm gonna go with the Ravens. I'm gonna go with the Ravens. I'm gonna rock with them.
Man, with the Ravens injuries coming into this week, it's tough. They're gonna be missing a lot of players again, a lot of key players.
Don't take too long with your pick, man. Ravens or Browns?
I'm gonna go with the Browns.
I'm going Cleveland as well. Bengals coming off their first win of the season on Monday night, go on the road to play the Tennessee Titans.
I will go with the Bengals.
Bengals.
We have the Rams going up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indy.
This is an interesting matchup, but I'm gonna go with the Rams in this one.
I think I'm gonna go with the Colts. I think Richardson's back. Should be back this week, right?
Richardson did practice in full today, so he'll be back for this week.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and go with the Colts. We also have another divisional matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on the road to play the New Orleans Saints.
Well, I just know Lattimore owns Mike Evans, so I'm gonna go with the Saints.
I'm going with the Saints. Derek Carr's on the bench. My guy Winston's starting. Let's go Saints. The whole new type of offense, baby. Kamar's back. Yeah, we rolling right now. We rolling. We here now.
Go ahead and give me the Saints. We have another 2-0-3 team matchup between my Minnesota Vikings going on the road to play the Carolina Panthers.
All right, surely the Vikings have some shame, so I'm gonna go with the Vikings.
Surely they have some shame, but I don't know about that defense. It might be that Bryce Young week where he go for 350 and like 3 tugs. So I'm gonna go with the Vikings though.
I'm going with my Vikings in this one. We have the Washington Commanders going on the road to play the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm gonna go with the Eagles.
Eagles.
Steelers going on the road to play the Houston Texans.
Ooh, it's gonna be CJ Stroud's test. Oh, how do I feel about this match? I'm gonna go with the Texans.
I'm going with the Texans.
I gotta go Texans in this one as well. I like what I'm seeing from CJ
Interesting.
Stroud. We have the Raiders going on the road to play the Los Angeles Chargers, who got their first win last week.
These two teams go at it, but I'm gonna go with the Chargers.
Chargers. Patriots on the road to play the Dallas Cowboys.
Cowboys.
Cardinals picking up their first win last week against the Dallas Cowboys, going on the road to play the 3-0 San Francisco 49ers. Niners. A game that could have been interesting on Sunday night between the Kansas City Chiefs going on the road to play the New York Jets. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers will not be playing in this game, but KC on the road playing the Jets.
You know, Taylor Swift is gonna be in attendance, but I think she's gonna watch a horror show. I think I'm gonna go with the Chiefs in this one.
Chiefs, and we'll go ahead and close out with the Monday night matchup between the Seattle Seahawks. Big H's Seahawks go on the road to play the New York Giants.
Hey, we get all our defensive players back this week.
I swear Daniel Jones like 1-11 primetime games, but
make it 1-12. We cooking his ass.
I'm gonna go with the Seahawks in this game.
We cooking Daniel Jones, man. It's barbecue chicken. Yeah, Monday Night Football primetime, baby. Let's get it. Seattle.
Yeah, I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks in this one as well. I'm not too sure if Saquon's going to be able to play in this week, in this game on Monday night. But if we'll go ahead before we move off and close out this episode. The records from last week. Abdi staying red hot once again, finishing with a record of 12-4. I finished with a record of 10-6, and Big H came in last place this week with a record of 9-7. But overall, week by week totals, we have Abdi still at number 1 with 33-15. Big H at number 2 with 30-18. And I'm currently in third place, slacking off with a record of 28-20. So, Kelly Abdi, you're off to a red hot start.